Have you ever seen a psychologist before?
Yes, I have.
How about a psychiatrist?
Yes, I have.
How was your experience with both of them?
It was good. Um, I was suffering from some problems um, as a younger adult with anxiety and some family history, and just felt I needed somebody to talk to.
What's your family history?
Um, my mom suffers from anxiety. Um, she suffers from pretty major depression, and it kind of led me to believe that maybe I should get myself checked out.
So what brings you here today?
Well, it's the anxiety has been a lot stronger lately, and it's just something I felt I should have checked out. It's been a long time since I've met with anybody, and
What do you think it stems from lately?
um, well, I'm a big believer in the time of the year when, um, you know, especially in wintertime, the winter blues, and I feel that that really has been, you know, more of the problem lately. And work, uh,
Any of so mostly just work and this winter blues. Anything else?
yeah, I would say mainly those two areas.
How does this affect your life, for the most part, on a day-to-day basis?
Well, with work, it can make me more anxious. Um, it can make the day probably a little bit more stressful than it needs to be. A lot of that, I have a stressful job as a property adjuster when things and the weather gets really intense and damages get, you know, when we get bad damages all at one time, it can be very stressful, and uh, I think it's that way for most people, but I think my anxiety makes it a little bit more than it needs to be. And so, you know, with the weather lately and the, the just the winter blues, it kind of makes a kind of a recipe for disaster for myself, and so I just felt that I needed to kind of get some things off my chest.
Could you give an example of a stressful situation at work, or something that you go through most of the time?
Um, like I said, mainly when it seems to be when things kind of pile all on one time, and um, when things happen at one time, I have a tendency to group my problems together and make the situation probably much more worse than it actually really is. I think my anxiety kind of kicks in, and I make the situation worse than it really should be. I feel that, like a lot of people that do my job probably do that. Some people handle it better than others. Uh, Although it does help, it actually does help me because it makes me concentrate more on my job and take it more seriously, and I want to make sure I do a good job, and so the outcome is less stressful. But sometimes it can be kind of tough, depending on the time of year, and yeah,
How long have you been at your job?
a little over 20 years.
Was it something that you always wanted to do?
No, to be honest, no. I needed a job when I was in my early adulthood life that was better than the prior job I had in retail, and my wife actually recommended insurance, and so I gave it a try, and one thing led to another, and I've been doing this, like I said, for over 20 years.
So overall, you'd say you like your job, you just don't like how stressed it makes you?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I feel that I do very well at my job. I, you know, I pay attention to the details. Probably a lot of my personality kind of points me in that direction. But on this other side, when things get very busy all at one time, things can kind of happen at one time. That's when things get really difficult, and I get very anxious.
So you never really consider doing another job. You still like your current job, even though the stresses it brings you.
Yeah, yeah,
I guess what I'm saying is like the other stuff kind of outweighs the anxiety and stress part of it, but it's still.
the good outweighs the
Yeah.
bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
How would you describe your overall mood, even though that's separate kind of from the anxiety, but does the anxiety affect your mood at all?
Yeah, it as I get more anxious, I definitely get more moody. I guess because I would be, I kind of actually probably get more angry with myself at the way I'm acting, so I can put myself in a bad mood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the combination of the job and anxiety, having children, and dealing with all that, just everything together. And I think most people go through that. It's just that we all deal with it a little differently, and I think I deal with it a little bit more intensely. Or
Do you ever take out your mood on other people, or just usually keep it to yourself?
I keep a lot of it to myself. Sometimes I have outbursts at home,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll ultimately or immediately feel guilty about it. But a lot of it is keeping it to myself and being very hard on myself. And I think,
So you somewhat beat yourself up
yeah,
about
oh yeah,
certain things,
yeah, quite a bit.
like about work and stuff, or other things as well?
Yeah, work or home life or just being a good husband or a good dad. I'll look back at something that I did and realize maybe I didn't handle that the best that I could have, and it'll get myself, I'll start to ruminate and get anxious about it, and it just kind of snowballs, I guess you could say.
So you keep thinking about something over and over again, and it
Yeah.
makes the problem completely worse.
Definitely.
Does this affect your quality of life at all, or would you say that you don't think it affects at all?
No, I think for the most part, I think my quality of life is very good, and it's just when it comes to certain stressful situations, I get very anxious, and beat myself up. I can do that if I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So when things don't go my way, I can get very hard on myself.
Do you suffer from anything else, do you think, besides anxiety? Or is it mostly your anxiety?
I think most of it is anxiety. I think, I've caught myself being a little depressed here and there and all, but that's not a major issue. I would definitely say, and I keep probably mentioning that, the anxiety is the biggest. But I've been dealing with it for a long time, so as I get older, I'm able to manage it better.
Have you ever had any problems with social anxiety?
Yeah, sure. Giving speeches, having to make a presentation. Not that I have to do it for work, although I will say that with my job, I sometimes get into situations where I have to, or a lot of time where I have to talk to a group of people on a damage claim and go over the damages.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm confident about it, it's not a problem. But I usually find that when I'm not real confident about the subject, and maybe I would have to give a presentation or talk to somebody about it, that could be really stressful, a very stressful situation. But with my work, since I've been doing it for so long, I just kind of go with the flow, and one thing leads to another, and it's much easier.
Okay. We'll continue to talk about this in another session. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.